Everyone knows that feeling, wanting to experience more stories, but struggling to find the time. That's where Audible changes everything. With over 1 million audiobooks and Audible originals, there's a story waiting to spark anyone's imagination. Take The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, the gripping psychological thriller that's keeping listeners on the edge of their seats. Imagine unraveling its mysteries during your morning commute, or losing yourself in its twists and turns while doing household chores. That's the magic of Audible. It transforms daily routines into opportunities for thrilling discoveries. The best part? Members get access to thousands of included titles, with new content added regularly. From bestsellers to hidden gems, every genre imaginable is at their fingertips. And with one easy-to-use app, switching between favorites or discovering new passions has never been simpler. There's more to imagine when you listen. Start a free 30-day Audible trial and get your first audiobook free at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
Now it's time for Inspirational Women and my guest, Barbara Feigin, who, in writing about her life in My American Dream, A Journey from Fascism to Freedom, shares the invaluable immigration story, the dedication, the determination, the life that was created, and all it has meant to all of us in this country. Barbara Feigin, good morning. It's so wonderful to have you join us this morning.
Well, thank you, Kate. It's great to be with you. So nice to speak with someone from Seattle, though.
Well, yes, because you have some footprints here.
Oh, yes, very much so.
And Washington State, because you were at Whitman. And yes, having, basically this was your landing in America was being in Seattle, right? Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, and I'm not, although I've lived here, oh goodness, more than half my life now, my origins are actually in central Canada. I grew up in Manitoba. And
oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's quite a trip to Seattle.
Well, and not only was it a trip to Seattle, it was via Hawaii. So you see, it was even
oh, my goodness.
a little more roundabout. But certainly not the trek that you had from Germany across to here, right?
Right.
Yes, seeing that on a map is just astounding. So
sort of overwhelming. It certainly was overwhelming to me when I first learned of my father's journal, and I sort of saw what it looked like when it was all plotted out on a map. As my father said, 3/4 of the way around the world into the unknown.
Yes, that is a captivating statement, and it was exactly the way it was, what you experienced.
They had no idea,
Right.
No connections, no money, nothing, no idea how they would make a life. But they were so elated to be in the land of the free, and they recognized that there was opportunity, and one way or another, they were very determined, very hardworking, and they knew they would make it work. And they did. I'm really proud of them.
Yes, it is such an incredible story, such really an inspiring immigration story of being so determined. With your mother working at the newspaper as well. Here she is an immigrant, but she has a column in the Chehalis newspaper.
Yes. And as I thought about that, I thought, it was amazing and sort of amusing. Here this immigrant woman who spoke no English when she came to America is working for the local newspaper, and she started out as a proofreader, and she was very good at what she did. I mean, she was so determined. She worked so hard to learn what she had to learn. And then she became the society editor, in quotes, of the Chehalis Advocate. And, that was sort of keeping her ear to the ground and learning about all the social activities that were going on in town and so forth, and writing them up. It's sort of amazing in retrospect that she was able to pull that off. And she did. She did a great job.
She must have to have had the job and to have done it for the years that she did. It's astounding because she did not know English when she first came to America, to the U.S.
No. None of us did.
Right.
None of us did. None of us knew a word of English. And we were such a strange little family in this tiny little town, Chehalis. There was no one like us at all. Refugees who had no money, no nothing, spoke no English. We were a strange little outlier group, all fiercely determined to become Americans, and that's ultimately what happened.
Yeah, the hard work, the determination, buying your first home, the scrimping and saving in order to make that happen.
That was such a milestone, Kate. My parents really understood that was part of, quote, the American dream, part of becoming an authentic American. And they saved and saved and saved and saved. And of course, they didn't want to have any debt. That was very important to them. So finally, they had enough money to buy this tiny little house. Now, when I was growing up there, it never struck me that it was particularly tiny. But I went back to look at it a few years ago, and the person who owned it was very nice and let me walk through it. I walked into, the living room and the tiny little kitchen and the room that had been my bedroom. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a tiny house. But they owned it. It was a great, great milestone for them.
Exactly. So your family of four, and then later your grandmother, your mother's mother, comes to live with you too. So you're all in what you say is this tiny, tiny house.
Scrunched into this little tiny house, right.
And so here are the beginnings of your life, really your life, but then your life in the U.S., because you're just, about 2 years old, 3 years old when you arrive,
yes.
Right?
Two.
Yeah. Yes, you're two when you arrive. So there you step into Washington State after this long journey from Germany, and here you are now living across on the other side of the country with so many accomplishments in your life, and you look back at this. What are those feelings, Barbara?
Well, I loved my life growing up in Chehalis. I just loved my life. I was very, very eager, as I said, to become sort of an authentic American girl, just like everybody else, and I wanted to have American friends and American fun and be just like everyone. And I always really loved it. My mother and my father were Berliners, so they had lived in a very sophisticated environment, very diverse population, which Chehalis was not. And I think my mother was always concerned that I had a very limited world view, which was right. She was right about that, because all I knew was Chehalis. I as far as I was concerned, my life began in Chehalis. That's what I remember and what have you. So I just loved it, and I think she was concerned that I hadn't opened my mind to what there was in the world, and she really always wanted me to know more. So my first big transition was when I went to Walla Walla, which to me was a huge town. Walla Walla, I think at that time had a population of about 25,000, and the sidewalks in Walla Walla sparkled, and I'd never seen anything like that. I think there was mica in the cement or something, and I remember writing home to my parents, that there are diamonds in the sidewalk here in Walla Walla. I'd never seen anything like it. I thought I was really in a big city. But that was the beginning of sort of the transition for me. And then, when I finished school at Walla Walla and graduated from Whitman, the real mind-opening experience I had was going to Boston and going to a program that was run, a business administration graduate program that was run jointly by the Harvard Business School and Radcliffe Graduate School. It was a program for women because at that time women were not admitted directly into the Harvard Business School. But that was a mind-opening experience, this big, sophisticated city with all kinds of different people, with all kinds of different experiences, so much history, and being at the Harvard Business School was just an enormously mind-opening experience. There were so many interesting, well-educated people there, a very diverse group. And I mean, I loved going to business school, but I just loved the feeling of being in Boston. And I finally was beginning to understand what my mother was talking about when she said, I needed to have a broader world view than I'd had. That was a truly, mind-opening experience for me.
And yes, exciting. And the things that you were experiencing at that point, as you talk about women not being accepted into the business program, this is something that you were coming up against in your life, even really, I think, in high school. And yet it wasn't a deterrent. It was like you noticed, almost like a mosquito irritating you, and you'd notice it, but you just kept on moving. You had this greater vision and a passion, which was really being encouraged and supported by your parents.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And, I really didn't think too much about what some of the obstacles were. I was focused on going forward, and the question was, how could I do that? If there were an obstacle, how could I get over it? How could I get around it? I just didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the problem. I was really focused on the solution. How could I get from here to there?
Isn't that like maybe our biggest life lesson is where we put that focus in what we're doing?
Oh, I'm sure you're right about that. There are a lot of life lessons. You talked about some of them earlier. Determination and perseverance and resilience. All those things are important because, just like everybody else, I came up on bumps in the road and kind of had to pick myself up and figure out how to keep moving and how to go forward. I think that probably happens to all of us. But, I think the question is, how can you focus on the solution and get to the next step? And that is a huge life lesson, yes.
And one of those tripping points, or one of those obstacles, which was the anti-Semitism. We maybe understand that, although it was still shocking to think of that happening during and after World War II, because we hoped America had a much bigger, better vision. But you experienced it then too, and you experienced it again at college. And yet, I don't know if we ever had a place that it wasn't really so present. But here we are today in 2024, and it's reared its very ugly head again.
That's true. I was not. Well, I was very naive. I lived a very sheltered life, really, as I think back on it, in our little small town and so forth. And I really was not overly conscious of anti-Semitism, it wasn't something that people talked about, and I wasn't conscious of experiencing it. And when I went to college, it's kind of sort of an interesting and sort of shocking story in some ways. In those days, virtually, the great preponderance of both men and women in my college were Greek. They belonged to fraternities and sororities. And sorority rush was a very big deal, and it happened right at the beginning of school. All the sororities had all kinds of teas and parties and picnics and what have you to sort of invite potential pledges and assess whether or not they wanted to invite them to become members of the sorority. And at the end of maybe a week or 10 days, the invitations came out to join the sororities, and I was stunned because I did not get one invitation. And I thought, surely there had been a mistake. I'd had a very effective high school experience. I was very, very, I did very well academically, and I was involved in all kinds of extracurricular activities and leadership roles and what have you. And I thought, what is wrong with me? And I investigated and learned that it definitely was not a mistake. And I never had any idea what the problem was. Eventually, I did get invited to join a sorority, and I did, and the question of why it came later than everybody else never came up. Fast forward to my 50th, 50, reunion at college, and I'm sitting at lunch. It's a beautiful, beautiful day in Walla Walla. The sky is blue, the sun is shining. All my classmates are sitting outside having a picnic lunch, and the woman sitting across from me, who was not one of my sorority sisters, leaned over and very quietly said to me, "You know, we would love to have pledged you, but we couldn't. It was the Jewish thing." Well, Kate, I almost fell off my chair. I had no thought that that was the problem. That the barrier for me was the same barrier that had chased my parents running for their lives out of Nazi Germany. Mm. I was beyond shocked. And then I thought, I really was naive that had not occurred to me. But it hadn't. And for all those years, I never knew what the problem was. And that was my sort of major anti-Semitism experience, personally.
Right. And if you dissect that, it happened. You felt wounded that you weren't invited, at least at the initiation period. But overall, and I'm thinking of this as any of us who feel that there's been that whatever kind of, I'll call it a slight, but it's a wounding. It doesn't have, right? It doesn't shunning. That's it. Yet, maybe in your naivety, you were able to. It just didn't impact how you kept moving forward, and you accomplished as much as you have in your life.
Well, it was crushing. It was a crushing experience at the time because this was such a small school,
yes.
And it was so obvious to everybody that I had been shunned and not invited. And I thought, I was so excited about going to college, and I thought it was going to be so great. And this happened within the first couple of weeks of school. And I thought, oh my goodness, I just had to walk tall, go to my classes, try to make friends. I had several different jobs. I worked my way through college, and I had several different jobs, so I worked hard at those. But it was a crushing experience. It took a long time for me to get over it.
Did you find you needed to do anything in particular to overcome that?
What an interesting question. Not consciously. Again, I just kept moving forward.
Yes.
And as I said, I was invited to join a sorority. Now, in retrospect, I don't know how they figured that out, given the fact that I gathered there were rules. There were rules against purging Jewish people. I don't know. But I just kept trying to move ahead, and friends were very important to me. And when I finally did join a sorority, the people who were my sorority sisters were my dear friends and continue to be my dear friends to this day. So I think just moving forward, and I think I probably subconsciously had that modeled for me by my parents, who really came upon many, many obstacles in their early life here in not to mention the obstacles in Germany, but in their early life here. And they just kept at it. They just kept at it, really amazingly.
They had to have been such amazing role models. It comes up repeatedly in your father's journal, and you, of course, then note it too in your writing about how there was only $10.50 for the whole family from leaving Germany traveling across the ocean. Your father calls it what, 3/4 of the way across around the planet to arrive in Seattle. $10.50, and they just found ways to save that, and yet manage to make the journey and scrape by. That, oh, talk about really strong character strength.
Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there are days when my father speaks in his journal about the fact that they couldn't eat. They couldn't eat because they didn't have the money, to buy food, and they had tickets on trains that gave them meal service, but there was no food. And I mean, I can't even imagine it. I can't imagine traveling 17 days in this terrifying, horrific situation, terrified every time the train stopped, and it stopped 14 times when their papers had to be examined and so forth. And they would be terrified about what would happen when the train stopped, With a 2.5-year-old, oh my goodness, I just can't even imagine.
Nor can I. But it sure does speak to the human spirit, as how they just really one foot in front of the other, and just that determination and I guess spirit pulling them forward and giving them strength. But yes.
Well, Kate, I think it's interesting. I think, again, in retrospect, I didn't think about all this when I was growing up. I was just focused on, becoming an American girl.
Right.
But in retrospect, I think they had a vision, I would say, of becoming authentic Americans. And they wanted to have the things that Americans had: a good job, a house, a car. When my father got to the point that he could buy a car, Kate, it was amazing. It was an amazing milestone. They scrimped and saved for the house, and then they scrimped and saved for the car. And he was finally able to buy a Studebaker Champion, which was sort of a popular car at the time. And he called it his Studi. And he was so proud of this. And he, I think he had written a letter to his parents saying, here in America, even the shop girls have cars. And so when he was able to get a car, it was really two things. It was a symbol for him of becoming authentically American, and it was a tool that enabled him to really find freedom, be out on the road, go where he wants, take his family on trips, do what he wants. It was a huge milestone. He was so proud and so happy. It was just amazing.
And that is, in its own way, it's similar to his working at Sears, and his dedication and hard work is noticed, and how he makes his transitions into different levels of the company, and really becomes, just one of the businessmen in the town.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
So again, both of your parents, such great role models, and yes, it comes through in your book that there isn't that discussion of what happened in Germany or what they escaped from. It's just really focused on what's here, and we're going to make the best life possible, becoming American citizens and celebrating that.
Oh, that was such a big thing. Becoming American citizens was such a big thing. I remember my parents, had to study for their tests to become authentic. To become naturalized. I became naturalized through them, but we had no money. I mean, my father, when he got this job at Sears, earned $17 a week, so they really lived very, very frugally. The day that we became citizens, my father said, we're going to go out to dinner at a restaurant. And we've never been in a restaurant, and I think we've been in America 5 years now. I think you had to be there 5 years to get your citizenship. So he took us to the coffee shop in the local hotel in Chehalis, the St. Helens Hotel. Oh, we were so excited to be in a restaurant in this little tiny coffee shop squeezed into a booth, but we were celebrating our naturalization. It was another hugely important milestone in our family.
It's those sorts of things that we really need to hear these stories to maybe appreciate. Well, I'm a naturalized citizen too, but I think for Americans, people born in this country, to realize, what it feels like for people to come and make the choice to become a citizen, and the big thing it is in our life.
Oh, yes. Yeah. My parents were so thrilled to be in America, Never, ever stopped being thrilled about being in America. They were so keen on its being the land of the free, and they believed fervently in education. And they really made this very clear to both me and my younger sister from very early on. They said, education is powerful. It's the door to opportunity for you to go and do and be what you want to be. So, whenever we went on a road trip in the studio, my mother plotted out on the map what the pathway would be, and we always went through towns where there were colleges, and we always stopped and toured the colleges and looked at the colleges, and they just impressed upon us how crucial it was to get as much education, as good an education as we possibly could, because they understood that was so important in opening doors to opportunity.
And that too is something to admire. That encouragement. I would think they were educated people. Your mother had a very good job in Germany because of the rise of Hitler. Your father was then moved out of his job because he was Jewish, but your mother still had a very good position. So I'm imagining she had education and therefore valued it, or she knew the value even if she didn't have a university education.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know very much about my parents' background. I don't know what kind of education they had. I mean, they were both very bright, and they were both, great readers and very interested. I mean, my father was thrilled when he came to America because of the free press in America. He could read whatever newspaper he wanted. He could think whatever he wanted. He could listen to the radio, which we all did in those early days. And, whether or not they had university education, I never knew that. I never thought to ask them about that. And it was one of the things that I really reflected on as I was writing my book. I thought, there's so many things I really should have asked about that I don't know and I didn't know. It's really one of the reasons why I wrote the book. I didn't want my children to be as ignorant as I had been of what had come before them. So I just don't know. I mean, I know that they certainly were well read, versed in what was happening in the world, and very smart.
And that is a key thing too, that going to university is not a guarantee of someone being really intelligent and accomplished, that it is possible, at least in that era, that their hard work, their determination, their awareness of the world and wanting to read and learn really was critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're right.
Oh, this is so fascinating, speaking with you, Barbara, about your early life, about your parents, they leaving Germany during the time of World War II. In your book, My American Dream, A Journey from Fascism to Freedom. And, here we are. We've really just focused on a very small sliver, a small fraction of the book. And there's so much here that I feel is so relevant and insightful for all of us that what I'd love to do is to have another conversation with you so we can discuss more of what's gone on in your life, because that is really significant, what you have gone on to accomplish.
Well, that would be terrific.
Well, we'll need to plan that, and we'll have essentially like a chapter 2, correct?
That sounds wonderful, Kate. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, in the meantime, though, with the book, it is freshly out, although it came out before, and I think this is a republishing. Is that correct?
It was. I published it privately for my children and my grandchildren. And this is its first debut into the public. Its launch date is January 16th, just in a few days. But people can pre-order it now, and it's in all the relevant places where they might buy their books. It can be pre-ordered, and they can learn more on my website, Kate. It's Barbara Feigin, one word. Feigin is my last name. .com. All the background and details are on the website. So people who are interested, and I hope they will be, should take a look.
Absolutely. I highly encourage and recommend doing so. There is so much that we can learn that it just inspires us, but really makes a difference because of its relevance in our world today.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you for our time today. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay. We'll talk again soon.
That brings us to the end of this very full hour of Inspirational Women with Barbara Feigin and Sunday Morning Magazine with Mary Beth Stibbons with Braver Angels. I'm Kate Daniels, your host, and I greatly appreciate your sharing this hour with me and these special guests. For details you might have missed or information you'd like to know, please just send me an email, kated@warm1069.com, and I will get right back to you. Also, if you'd like to listen again or share these important stories with your family and friends, find the podcast on our Warm 1069 webpage. Just click on the Listen tab, then Podcasts, then either of the show names, and then look for the guest names. I now wish you and your family a day of feeling the gratitude for what we have and be ready to grow it for a better, stronger country. Have a week of the same, and then please plan to join me again next weekend for another hour of Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women on Warm 1069. Good morning.